friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using Lawn Fawn's Rub-a-Dub-Dub, Swan Soiree, and Hello Baby. So I've stamped out the images I'll be using on some Nina Solar White cardstock with black licorice ink from Lawn Fawn, and I'm going to be coloring with my Copic markers. And beginning with the ducks, I'll be using BG quadruple 0 and BG 10 for them. I wanted them to look nice and white, but I definitely want them to have some dimension to them and to lift them off the page a bit. So I'm starting with the BG 10 and laying in some light shadows and then blending that out with the BG quadruple 0. And I'm going to let that fade off into the white. I want them to be mostly white so that they stay nice and bright looking. And I'm going to do the mama and all three babies exactly the same, just to keep them nice and consistent. Then I'm going to bring in the C0 and just add a little bit of a gray tone right on top of the coloring that I've already did. And this is just going to help it make it be a more realistic white. And I did the babies off camera as well. Then I'm moving on to their beaks and feet, and I thought for something different I would do yellow instead of orange. So I'm using Y11, Y13, and Y15. And I just thought it would be a nice, bright, sunshiny spot on the card, especially since I'm going to be doing a stormy sky scene. So I did all three of the babies exactly like the mama, except I only used the darkest two shades on their feet just because there really wasn't room for that third shade. So I just went ahead and filled them in with the Y13. I did save a little room on their beaks for the Y11 though, so they have that nice highlight. I'm moving on to the umbrella, and for the first section I wanted that to be a nice corally pink, so I'm using R20, R21, and R22. I'm doing this shadow on the outside edge of each section, right where the metal frame would be underneath, and then coloring it in kind of a triangular shape until I get to the center. And I am going to bring in a fourth shade, the R01, because I wanted it to be really nice and highlighted there in the center. And I did a double layer on that as well, just to make sure that the saturation was nice and strong on that fabric. So once I have the pink section done, I'm going to move on to the middle one, and I'm going to do that yellow. I hesitated there for a moment because I thought maybe I would change up which yellows I used, but I decided to go with the same ones that I used on the duck, except that I'm adding in the Y000 as well for the lightest shade. I really liked the depth of color that I was able to get with the 4-color blend on the pink, so I decided to replicate that with the yellow. And then for the blue section, I'm going to use the BG quadruple 0, and then the BG 10, BG 11, and BG 13. So I'm starting with the BG 13 this time, and then blending toward the center as I go down. And I did this umbrella to match the pattern paper that I'm going to be using later on the card. Once the coloring is done, I'm going to grab my black jelly roll pen from Sakura and just go over the eyes of each of the little ducks. And then I'm going to pop this panel into my Misty. Using the mermaid ink, I'm going to stamp out the little pond from Swan Soiree, and then a bunch of the little puddles and splashes from Rub-a-Dub-Dub, and that way I can use these as a large puddle for my little ducks to splash around in on my card. So then I'll just trim all of these out with the matching dies, and in the meantime I can move on to my focal panel. I'm using a piece of Post-it tape to mask off the bottom section of a piece of Bristol smooth surface cardstock, and then I'm going to take some Hickory Smoke Distress Oxide ink And I'm going to blend that onto the bottom to kind of create a little path or a sidewalk or whatever you want it to be. It's just some sort of ground. And I wanted it to be nice and light and then have a little bit more darkness on the edges for some contrast. So I'm just going to blend over that until I'm happy with it. And then I can peel up the tape and replace it right over top of what I have just done so that I can mask that part off and concentrate on the top half of the focal panel. For that, I'm going to be using the Lawn Fawn Cloudy Stencil, and I'm actually going to be doing it upside down today. I'm trying something out. I really wanted it to look like one of those days where the clouds are just so full of rain and moisture that they hang so low to the ground. It feels like they're so heavy. And so you're really seeing more of the underside of the clouds rather than the top. So I'm taking Stormy Sky Distress Oxide ink and I'm going to blend that on to the panel to make a sky. Then I'm going to rotate that cloudy border, and without re-inking, I'm going to blend over the white space that I just left. And I'm going to continue to do that up the panel. I wasn't sure if it was working out exactly, so I kind of took another look at it, but I decided to stick with it and then just add a little bit more light ink blending at the top there to really help those clouds look like storm clouds. Then before I take that mask off, I'm going to press some of that ink onto my work surface, water it down with my Distress sprayer, and then take a thin paintbrush and do some splatter detail across the scene so it can look like raindrops. Then I can peel off that mask and set the whole panel aside to dry for a little bit. Once it is, I'm going to take one of the Lawn Fawn large stitch rectangle stackables and I'm going to die cut this to be a little bit smaller of a focal panel. And it'll also give me that nice stitch detail on the outside edge. And now I can begin to adhere my images, starting with the large puddle down at the bottom. Whenever I am building my scenes, I always like to start with the largest images first and then kind of fill in the scene with the smaller images as I go. So next I'm going to do the mama duck and give her the umbrella to hold in her little wing there. I'm going to tip that at an angle so she can be covering her little baby. And then I'm going to add this little guy who's kind of stretching up to reach up under the umbrella so he can stay nice and dry. The next little duckling I'm going to add over on the right hand side. So he's splashing around. He doesn't care one bit if he's getting wet. And then the third one I'm going to put down in front. He's kind of wandered away from the group and he's off exploring in this little puddle that I'm going to add in front of him. So I think it's kind of fun to not only tell a story by building your scene, but also just give each of the little critters their own personality by the way that you place them in the scene as well. So I'm going to add one little splash mark over on the right as if that little duckling is kind of kicking in the water, and then another little one over on the left just to kind of balance that out. Then I will pop this whole piece into my MISTI so that I can stamp my sentiment, and I'm using my black licorice ink again to stamp I'm a Lucky Duck. While I'm at it, I'm also going to stamp on the inside of my card. I'm using Lawn Fawn's Mermaid cardstock for my card base. So I'm going to pop that in and stamp with peacock ink so that it is nice and bold. I'm going to continue my sentiment to say to have you as my friend, and then stamp a couple more of the ducklings on the inside. And then the pattern paper that I'm using today is from the Hello Sunshine Remix collection, and I've trimmed down all of my pieces with the outside in stitch rectangle stackables. So that trims down the panel just slightly so I get that pretty blue cardstock showing through on the edges, and it also gives me that nice stitching detail. So I did the gray and white polka dot to cover the card front, and then I'm doing the Oh Happy Day piece vertically across the center. And then I'm going to do this pretty pastel-ish stripe rainbow print horizontally, just a little low of center. Once I have that lined up nice and straight, I'll grab my focal panel, peel off the release papers from the foam tape that I added to the back, and then I'm going to line that up in the center of my card. Make sure that it is nice and straight. It was not quite where I wanted it, so I just peeled that up quickly before that foam tape had a chance to adhere, and then realigned that focal panel and pressed it down firmly into place. As a finishing touch, I'm going to take some Lawn Fawn liquid stardust and just spritz a little bit of that onto my work surface. And then I'm going to take that same paintbrush that I used earlier and just dab it here and there onto the background to add a little shimmer and shine. I meant to splatter this earlier when I did the other splatter detail and I just forgot. So I thought I would just go back and add it now so I still have that pretty effect. So once I have it everywhere that I want it, that is going to complete my card for today. Just wipe up the remaining little bit of that with a baby wipe. So I'll lift that up to the camera so you can see how pretty that liquid stardust is when it catches the light, and give you another peek at the inside. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. It's going to be on the Lawn Fawn blog today, so you can go over there to check it out. If you did like it, please be sure to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe if you haven't already. You can also ring the notification bell if you want to be sure that my videos always end up in your feed. And if you'd like to keep on watching, here are 2 extra videos I thought you might also be interested in, so you can click on either one of those to check them out. I hope you all have an absolutely amazing day. Bye-bye.